Amen. 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 I believe. Amen. Sing it over. Amen. 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 Sing it over.
Heram baleram, heram, 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 hera, hera, rora, heram baleram, heram, 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 hera, rora, hera, rora, heram baleram, heram, 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 hera, hera, rora, heram baleram, heram, heram. I don't know how my mother walked her trouble down. I don't know how my father stood his ground. I don't know how people survive slavery. I do remember, that's why I believe. I don't know why the rivers overflow their banks. I don't know why the snow falls and covers the ground. I don't know why the hurricane sweeps through the land every now and then. Standing in a rainstorm, I believe. I don't know why the angels woke me up this morning soon. I don't know why the blood still runs through my veins. I don't know how I rate to run another day. I am here still running, I believe. Heram baleram, heram, 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 hera, hera, rora, heram baleram, heram, 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 hera, hera, rora, hera, rora, heram baleram, heram, 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 hera, hera, rora, heram baleram, heram, heram,
Welcome to the 21st Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration hosted by the City of Bellingham. Thank you so much for coming, and a special welcome to those who marched here and braved our winter wonderland. My name is Marie Marchand, and I am so honored to be the co-host of this event today. But I would like to welcome the host of this event, the inimitable Clyde Ford. Clyde Ford, ladies and gentlemen. Bueller.
I thought you got the email. Clyde's out of the country.
Thinking I didn't get that memo. Let's see. Okay.
You're on your own.
I'm on my own. I can say anything I want. Okay. Well, I would like to give a huge shout out to Clyde Ford. As you all know, he has been the MC for many years since the beginning of this event, and without opportunity to gather each year in Dr. King's name. So Clyde, wherever you are, thank you very much. And another person who has been such a big part of making this event happen for more than a decade is City Councilman Terry Borneman. Thank you, Terry. I'd like to acknowledge others who joined Clyde and Terry in organizing this year's event, and those are Joseph Garcia, Cynthia Zafarados, Gail Smedley, Alexandra Wiley, with special thanks to Janice Keller. And finally, this event would not be as colorful and joyful without Roger Griffith and the Colchian Chorus. Once again, I'm honored to be hosting this event and to have the privilege of introducing such an amazing and impressive line of speakers today. Some will be talking about the dream of financial justice and the need for financial reform from the ground up through citizen empowerment and action. Others will be speaking about the value of service to the world. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to share a brief reflection on service. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Everybody can be great because anyone can serve. You don't need a college degree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love." I work as the executive director of Friendship House, which is a housing program and community kitchen in Mount Vernon. And every day I see different expressions of service. Families and individuals in our kitchen, mothers and daughters knit hats and scarves for the residents, and community leaders volunteer on our committees and board of directors. Because everybody can be great, because anyone can serve. There's a particular expression of service, however, that is the most inspiring to me. One that goes unrecognized, because people who suffer extreme poverty are often underlooked and invisible in the mainstream. And this particular expression of service is the poor serving the poor, the dispirited lifting one another up and helping one another in a tremendous expression of solidarity during what is the hardest times of their lives. It is a beautiful thing to witness, and it is a triumph of the human spirit. Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. Each of today's speakers is dedicated to service, and each is committing their efforts to lifting up the achievements of Martin Luther King Jr. and, most importantly, to carrying on his dream. What a pleasure it is to introduce our first speaker. Mayor Kelly Linville is well known locally and statewide for her fair, independent voice and highly effective leadership. Throughout her legislative career, she continuously reached across the aisle for the common good. She brings to her new position a great passion for community service and excellence in government. And of course, she is the first female mayor of Bellingham, which makes her extra cool. Kelly.
Well, welcome everyone today to this celebration. The last celebration I went to, we were standing, last Martin Luther King celebration I went to, we were standing outside City Hall, and I was hoping today we would be undercover. So we are, though it's beautiful out there. Martin Luther King, 40 years ago, was someone who was an inspiration to me as an idealistic 23-year-old. I watched his ability to maintain his passion, his fairness, and his commitment to making sure that his vision of jobs, justice, and peace was one that we would all reach. And as he said, potentially not in his lifetime, but certainly it's a path that we are still on. 2 generations have come to pass since we lost the voice of Reverend King. At our state capitol this morning, and I've missed this now, but for 17 years, we have a Martin Luther King Day celebration, which is being replicated all over the state, including here in Bellingham. It is a very inspirational activity and opportunity because people from various political backgrounds, people from various parts of the state, people that may not agree on one other thing, stood up this morning in our state capitol and praised the work of Dr. King and talked about the need to continue to move forward because we have not met his promised land. I believe that his lasting legacy is something that every single one of us in this room is committed to. Whether it's what we do at the international level, the national level, the state level, what's most important for us is what we do in the city of Bellingham, and that we commit to equal opportunity for every one of our citizens. And I promise to do that as your mayor, because I continue to be inspired by the work of every single person who puts public service in front of what's their own best interest. As being somebody who has just finished their 30th year as what I consider a public servant, I don't think there's any higher calling than being, for me, the representative of a wonderful city that cares about its people, and somebody who can ensure that the values and the vision and the goals of a fine, wonderful, inspirational leader like Martin Luther King expounded upon happen here in our own city. So thank you for coming here. I appreciate everybody's attendance, everyone who walked in the snow. We have a long line of speakers, so I am not going to go on any longer, though I do want to take one moment to introduce a fellow ex-legislator of mine who made the trek up to Whatcom County in the snow, former Representative Laura Rudeman, who's amongst us today and who will be running for the 1st Congressional District. Okay, I did my bit. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Our next speaker is Jim Kozad, who works at the Opportunity Council as a family development specialist and housing case manager. He served on the board of the Interfaith Coalition for 30 years. He has been involved during the past 20 years with the Homeless Coalition and the Anti-Hunger Coalition, and he was a key organizer in today's march and Critical Needs Drive. Jim?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to be here, and especially thank all of you who weathered this terrible weather to march, Poverty Action March and Essential Needs Drive. There are large numbers of you there today. It was organized and put on by a number of different folks volunteering their time from our social service agencies and from our faith communities. And it's a start. I grew up in Tacoma, went to a predominantly black high school, and had many friends during those years in the 60s when Martin Luther King showed up on television, black and white television. And I watched that speech and I was mesmerized. Mesmerized not only because he raised the level of consciousness to an entire nation, but mesmerized by the fact that some of my friends in some parts of this country could not eat at certain lunch counters and could not drink out of certain water fountains. And that was pretty disturbing. And it was a pretty chaotic time, not only in terms of civil rights, but also turning and facing issues of war and peace and how much money we spend on wars. And it was very, very chaotic. And I spent 30 years working with the Bellingham School District, dealing with students and families in this community. In the last 15 years, I spent working with at-risk kids. And I've been literally amazed, especially towards the end of my career, because I started seeing more and more at-risk kids. And they weren't at risk of dropping out of school because they were dumb. They were actually quite intelligent, but they were at risk because of the simple fact that we as a community have failed to deal with some of those poverty issues. I'm talking about addictions, I'm talking about mental health issues, I'm talking about domestic violence. It's not a priority, and it continues to grow and eat away at the fabric of our communities. And it needs to be a priority if we're going to ever move to prosperity. And so we're not there yet as far as the dream's concerned. And all you have to do is look at the statistics. Children of color in our schools are not living up and getting the fair shake. There is a wide discrepancy in the statistics. People in poverty and unemployed, a disproportionate number, are people of color. You can look at our prison system and see a huge disproportion of people of color. And our entire criminal justice system is a waste of money, and I'll tell you why. 1 out of every 32 Americans is in jail, prison, or on probation. We spend between $30,000 and $50,000 a year per person to warehouse them. And then when we let them out with $40 in a bus pass, we wonder why 3 out of every 4 reoffend and go back to us paying $30,000 to $50,000 a year. I'm a school teacher. Nationally, 3 out of every 4 means it's only a 25% success rate. And disproportionately, 80% of all of those people that are in our prison system have addiction problems, mental health problems, or are illiterate. What in the world are we doing warehousing our mentally ill? Addictions have been classified by the American Medical Association as a disease. Why are we treating addiction and mental health issues as criminal justice issues and not public health issues? Dr. King raised the level of consciousness of this nation. He came and said, we're not reading the Constitution right. The Emancipation Proclamation said all men are created equal. It was 100 years later. He said we're all entitled to the unalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if we look around, all of those are slowly deteriorating. How can you have life if you don't have health care? There are a number of things, and I could go on, but I won't, I promise, only 4 minutes. Anyway, thank you very much.
I've been
around, no. Turn me around, no. Turn me around. Ain't gonna let intolerance turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Yeah, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, no. Turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom.
By the water, I shall not be moved. We are all God's children, and I shall not be moved. We are all God's children, I shall not be moved. Just like a tree planted by the muddy water, I shall not be moved. I'm on my way to glory, and I shall not be moved. I'm on my way to glory, and I shall not be moved. Just like a tree planted by the water, I shall not be moved. You know, we are all God's children, and I shall not be moved. Sing it with us now. We are all God's children, and I shall not be moved. Just like a tree planted by that muddy water. You know, I shall not be moved. You know, I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. Just like a tree buried by the muddy water. I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. Just like a tree planted by that muddy water. I shall not be moved. Don't let anybody let you turn it back.
Thank you so much. Dr. Trula Nichols is our next speaker, and she's an assistant professor in the Human Services program at Western Washington University. Prior to teaching, she worked as a human services professional in various nonprofit organizations. She's lived in Whatcom County for over 30 years, and she is currently the faculty advisor of the Black Student Union at Western. Please help me welcome Trula Nichols.
Thank you. And thank you, Colson Chorus. You remind me of my younger days. Most remember Dr. Martin Luther King as a man who struggled for justice as it relates to race, or more accurately, to the color of one's skin. Because of the work that he and others did, we as a nation have made significant strides in the area of racial justice, although we still have a ways to go. We've made significant strides in the area of justice as it relates to gender, but once again, we have a ways to go. Now, we have made some headway in the area of justice as it relates to sexual orientation and gender identity. On this one, we've got quite a ways to go. And we've only begun our journey when it comes to justice for people of varying abilities. Some people call this disability. We've got a long ways to go. Today, in the year 2012, it is not only just, but it is a must that we address another kind of justice. This justice is economic justice. The fight for economic justice is not new to us as a nation. In a speech that he gave on April 4th, 1967, Dr. King said, "We as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin shifting from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society." Later in that same speech, he says, "A true revolution of values will soon look uneasily at the glaring contrast between poverty and wealth." These words were uttered 45 years ago. Now, I've been alive during that 45-year period, and I cannot recall a radical revolution of values taking place in this nation. I've rarely seen this nation look uneasily at the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth. I have not witnessed us moving rapidly or otherwise from a thing orientation to a person orientation. Now, I know that at least 99% of us in this nation are feeling a bit jittery about the current economic situation. But today, I'm asking you to see this economic downturn, this Great Recession, or to be more honest, this Second Great Depression, as an opportunity. Let's use this economic catastrophe as an opportunity to look uneasily at the glaring contrast between poverty and wealth. Let us take this economic disaster to move more rapidly from a thing orientation to a person orientation. Let us use this economic opportunity to fully engage in a radical revolution of values. So today, I'm challenging each and every one of you to examine your lives, examine your day-to-day activities, and examine your values and ask yourself, do I look uneasily and speak out on the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth in my community? Do my daily behaviors demonstrate that I'm attempting to move from a thing orientation to a person orientation? Do I have the courage to truly engage in a radical revolution of values? In order for this nation to turn this economic disaster into an opportunity to promote economic justice, we must start with ourselves, spread the news to our family and friends, engage in dialogue with our elected officials, and make our community one that demands economic justice for all. Thank you.
Wow, that was great. Wonderful, thank you. Our next speakers are Heidi Landeros and Lauren Taylor, and they are 8th grade students from Vista Middle School, and they are going to share their essays about what service in the world means to them, and I very much admire them for joining us today.
We the people, those are the first words of the Constitution of the United States. Although, looking back at our nation's past, it hasn't always been about a we. Today, all Americans enjoy the rights to attend the same schools, eat at the same restaurants, and simply drink at the same water fountains, regardless of their skin color. But it hasn't always been this way. Only 48 years ago, the dream of equality was just that, a dream. However, a man by the name of Martin Luther King Jr. was determined to make it a reality. Often referred to as the father of the civil rights movement, we remember Dr. King as the man who opened the eyes of many Americans. Dr. King talked about a new world where people of all races could live together in love and peace. He once said, quote, "Hatred paralyzes life. Love releases it. Hatred confuses life. Love harmonizes it. Hatred darkens life. Love illuminates it," unquote. Not only did he speak about a world of equality, but he achieved his vision with service. And through peaceful protests and civil disobedience, Dr. King slowly watched his dream come true. On July 2nd, 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed, but Dr. King's dream didn't stop there. He continued to work for world peace, economic justice, and equality for everyone. Sadly, on April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated on the balcony of a motel in Memphis, Tennessee, while trying to help Black and white sanitation workers organize a union that would better their poor working conditions. On that day, our nation lost a great man, but to this day, his legacy and his dream live on through all the hearts he has touched. Today, we set aside a day to honor a true hero, but in order to honor Dr. King's memory, we must also honor his dream. Dr. King was a great believer of social service, whether it be changing the face of America or just helping out in your community. Quote, "The time is always right to do what is right," unquote, Dr. Martin Luther King. Although Dr. King dedicated and gave up his life to be a community service worker, you don't have to give up your life in order to serve the dream. Little things like donating your old clothes, recycling, or volunteering at your local food bank could add up to help serve the dream. Furthermore, serving your community doesn't have to be a chore. Martin Luther King loved what he did, and you can serve by doing what you love too. That may include helping out your local animal shelter if you like animals, or serving through your church. The legacy of Dr. King will forever hold a spot in Americans' hearts as a time of great despair and ignorance, but also as a time of triumph and flourishing hope. Dr. King is no longer with us, but his dream will remain immortal. Now it is our jobs as Americans to make sure his dream continues to be a reality through the actions of our everyday lives. And on a finishing note, let us honor Dr. King and his vision through his own words. Quote, "Teach this triple truth to all. A generous heart, kind speech, and a life of service and compassion are the things which renew humanity." Unquote. Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Dr. Martin Luther King was a man of strong beliefs. He believed that African Americans were equal to whites. He believed in peaceful protests and the idea that all things can be solved with peace, while violence only leads to more violence. One of Dr. King's strongest beliefs, though, and maybe the most important, was that, quote, "Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" Time and time again, Martin Luther King acknowledged this philosophy. He was as selfless as a man could be. He demonstrated this selflessness through service. The amount of time and energy that he put into volunteering and doing service for his community was incredible. Just like a soldier risks their life to serve their country, Dr. King risked his to serve the African American population. Since he was the man who made the remarkable civil rights movement possible, whites who were opposed to the freedom of African Americans targeted him wherever he went. But Dr. King never stopped. He wouldn't quit until the words of his I Have a Dream speech were considered and carried into reality. His entire life was dedicated to, and even ended with, service. An important fact that is often overlooked in the history of Dr. Martin Luther King is that he had a second dream. That dream was the wish to be rid of poverty and homelessness in the United States. This vision of his included both blacks and whites. Dr. King once said, "There is nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to be rid of poverty. The real question is whether we have the will." This statement has provoked thought and action nationwide, helping people see the importance and value in community service. It made people realize that if they had the techniques and resources to be rid of poverty, then all they needed to do was tap into their own will. The will to help others is something that is inside all of us. Martin Luther King Day of Service is an opportunity for us to find that will and do something to help the community. You might help out at your local animal shelter or pick up trash on the side of the freeway. You might even just give someone a smile to help brighten their day. Winston Churchill, a man who also felt strongly about service, once said, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." This Monday, try to remember that. Remember that you can help in many ways, big or small. Don't think of volunteer work as a chore. Think of it as something fun, something that enriches your life. What's more, it doesn't have to be just this one day of the year that you choose to help the community. This could be your jumping off point, the time in your life when you realize that you enjoy a life of giving. When you think of all the service Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did, remember that he was just one man. Imagine what even more people can do. Imagine what our whole city can do. Imagine what the world can do. There are no limits to the possibilities. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, the real question is whether we have the will.
Sweet freedom, let freedom ring, let it ring, let it ring, let freedom, let it ring in my house, in your house, in the House of Representatives. Let freedom ring in Darfur, in Sudan and Somalia, in Afghanistan. Let freedom ring in Syria, in Egypt and in Libya. Let freedom ring in Wisconsin, in Ohio, in Arizona and down in Florida. Let freedom ring in my heart, in your heart, in the heart of all creation. Let freedom ring, let it ring, let it ring, let freedom ring. Let it ring, let it ring, let it ring, let it ring, let it ring.
I have always wondered what kind of faces Roger makes to them to make them smile so much. But I would never find out because I'm such an awful singer. They keep telling me I would be good, but no, I wouldn't. I just want to say that I think Clyde and I might be out of a job and Heidi and Lauren might take over next year. What do you think? Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Mark Lowry. He's president of the Northwest Washington Central Labor Council. The council is the central body of labor organizations in Whatcom, Skagit, and San Juan counties. Over 21 organizations belong to the council, and several thousand working men and women belong to council-affiliated organizations. Mark?
Good afternoon, and thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to a crowd like this. We've come together today as a community in order to commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King and to honor the work of his life. There are few people left that actually remember Dr. King. An assassin's bullet took his life when I was just a young boy, and I'm not young anymore. Fewer people will remember him next year than they do today. What we do remember, and what we really commemorate, is the lasting change that he made through the work that he did and the struggles that he undertook, and that it's change that, in large part, will be made inevitable by the simple force of the will of one person willing to work for it. History remembers Dr. King for his activism in the civil rights movement at a time in this country when we were being forced to confront our prejudices, or at least being forced to deal with them. Real progress has been made in this fight, but I think we all know that Dr. King would recognize that we have a lot of work yet to do. But King's message was more complex and more nuanced than simply one for racial equality. His message of civil rights was a message that brought him into lockstep with the labor movement. And with that struggle, he could never separate himself from the goal because it was part of the dream. His fight was for a nation and a people where we were all recognized to have the same set of rights and freedoms. He believed that basic human rights, basic human respect and dignity was a right that all of us should demand. And he believed that freedom from economic oppression and from the tyranny of poverty was inseparable from the other components of civil rights. Dr. King was a labor activist. He frequently spoke at national conventions of labor unions, and he was an honorary member of more than one. He often spoke of the moral imperative of the labor movement, and just as frequently, he goaded us into action lest we become too complacent with the status quo, and in case we failed to actively work for the mission that we stated and we undertook for ourselves. He marched in labor marches. He walked our picket lines. Union attorneys posted his bail when he was frequently arrested, and they defended him in court. His life was cut short in Memphis, Tennessee, when he was defending the rights of sanitation workers to form a union and bargain for dignity in the workplace and for a wage sufficient to fully participate in the bounty of America. He believed that all labor had dignity, no matter how menial. He stated often that the only thing menial in menial labor was the wage, not the honest work. He said, and I quote, "I do not come to you as a prophet of doom. I come to you as one that has accepted the challenge of our urban ghettos. This is a more difficult challenge than the one that we face in the South, for we are not dealing with constitutional rights. We are dealing with the fundamental human rights. It's a constitutional right for a man to be able to vote. But a human right to a decent house is as categorically imperative and morally absolute as was that constitutional right. It is not a constitutional right that men have jobs, but it is a human right." Close quote. If he were alive to see the America of today, I believe that he would acknowledge that we've made some progress. I believe that we've come to a different place than what he left us on April the 4th of 1968. And in many ways, we are gaining ground on the dream. But I think he would also recognize that in many ways, America is failing. I think that he would once again stand before the leaders of labor and admonish us for our complacency. And he would goad us to empty our halls and fill the streets. Somehow, I personally don't think that he would feel that honored to have a banking holiday in his name. I don't think that he would feel revered that there's a linen sale in his name at Kmart. But if each and every one of us pick up the struggle where he left it off and do what we can to push back to power because he showed us how, then I think that would be something that he would be honored by. I can never take his place at the front of the march, but I can find mine in the ranks. I have the power to make a difference, even if it's just a small difference. And if people of conscience do no less in our thousands and in our millions, then we can remake this country, and we can be free at last. Free at last. So, do you want peace? Live it in your life. Do you want freedom? Yeah. Fight for it. Do you want justice? Yeah. Work for it. Solidarity.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. Very powerful. And thank you for reminding me about the linen sale. Ellen Murphy's mad at me. Our final speaker is Kathy Lehman. Kathy is a downtown resident, nonprofit director, and graduate of Western Washington University. She holds a certificate in sustainable business. She's worked for a decade in community and economic development here in Bellingham. And last November, Kathy was elected for her first term in the Bellingham City Council. Kathy?
I am Kathy, and I'm extremely grateful to be here today. Thank you all so much for joining us, and the Colshan Choir and all of our speakers, thank you. Terry asked me weeks ago to speak tonight, and I've been thinking about it for weeks, or to speak this afternoon, because I thought Martin Luther King and economic justice are such immense topics. Who am I to speak to this? And what do I have to offer? What do I have to say? And as always, I get up here and listen to others and am inspired by all of them, and it helps me as well. Kelly promised that we as a city can commit to equal opportunity for all of our citizens. Jim reminded us that we all have certain inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Trula challenged us that this is an opportunity to fully engage in a radical revolution of values. Heidi and Lauren shared with us the legacy of Dr. King and his immortal dream, the question, what are you doing for others? And the vision he had of eradicating poverty. And of course, Mark recalled Dr. King's commitment to dignity in the workplace and the human right of employment. I was doing some research on Dr. King to prepare for today and was reminded, it's been a while since I was in high school history class. It was really great to go back and read the speeches and the letter from Birmingham jail and all of those things that we took time to really investigate in our youth. And I didn't know how committed Dr. King was to what was called the Poor People's Campaign, also known as Phase 2 of the Civil Rights Movement. And that when he was killed, he was actively pursuing his dream of an economic Bill of Rights. How forward-thinking, right? How incredible, is something we need today, just as strongly as we did then, if not more so. Absolutely incredible. In today's New York Times, Paul Krugman wrote, "Yet if King could see America now, I believe that he would be disappointed and feel that his work was nowhere near done. He dreamed of a nation in which his children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. But what we actually became is a nation that judges people not by the color of their skin, or at least not as much as in the past, but by the size of their paychecks. And in America, what we have come to realize even more so just recently, more than any other wealthy nation, the size of your paycheck is strongly correlated with the size of your father's paycheck. What I'm talking about is economic mobility. The ability to work hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and move forward in life. Something that we all dreamed was the true American dream, and we're not so sure is within grasp now. There's still a lot of work to be done. Financial justice is such a big question. So big, actually, I don't think that I can pretend to answer it today, but I do want to acknowledge what's so important about that concept is that we face that it hurts, that there's a face to economic injustice, that our friends and our family are suffering. Even if some of us in this economy are okay, we're doing fine, we haven't been laid off, we haven't struggled to find a job, odds are extremely high that someone very close to us is in that situation. And that's the truth of today. And I just do want to note that it's important we recognize non-Caucasians are disproportionately affected by this situation, still in America. So what I want to really say today, what I think that I can offer, I did run for office last year. I'm probably a little younger than the average person you've seen as an elected official. And I think that's prompted a lot of people to ask me why I ran for office, and so I'm going to share that with you. I ran for office because I was asked to run for office. It's very simple, really. The power of asking people to share and to help is incredible. And so I am asking you today. All of our speakers have talked about service and about what we can do as a community to step forward and live Dr. King's dream and continue to improve our community and bring more economic justice to our local community. And I'm going to take the audacious step of saying on behalf of your city and your local government, and actually as an elected official who is sworn to uphold the Constitution and the laws of this country and this state, on behalf of your government, I'm asking you to step up and participate in solving this. So you have officially been asked. And yes. Yeah. So I was asked, I've asked you, ask others too. Ask people to help and to participate. I know so many of you are already doing so much. We do live in an incredible community, and there is so much work still to be done. Let's do the work. Thank you.
I am so happy that you all came here today. And before I invite the Colson Chorus to close, I'd like to share a reflection, and I need your help on this. And I'm going to ask you a question, and then if you could say yes. Okay. So I'm pretty young, right? Yes. Yes? Okay. All right, that's it. No. Well, in preparing for today, I had a really profound realization that my life has been longer than Martin Luther King Jr.'s life. And it reminded me not only about how much he accomplished in his life, but how much he sacrificed. He had 4 little children. I have one who's that high. I can't imagine sacrificing that. Thank you for being here to honor this incredible man. And all of our speakers talked about embodying him and his dream and bringing it alive and continuing it. And I'm very inspired by our speakers today. I would like to invite the Colson Chorus to close out our time together. And thank you once again.
Many years ago, Paul Simon penned these words, and I thought I would share them with you before we sing them. Many is the time I've been mistaken and many times confused. Yes, and often felt forsaken and certainly misused. But I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm just weary to my bones. Still, you don't expect to be bright and bon vivant when you're so far away from home. I don't know a soul who's not been battered. I don't have a friend who feels at ease. I don't know a dream that's not been shattered or driven to its knees. But it's all right. We've lived so well so long. Still, when I think of the road we're traveling on, I can't help but wonder what's gone wrong. Wonder what's gone wrong. And I dreamed I was dying. I dreamed that my soul rose unexpectedly, and looking back down at me, smiled reassuringly. And I dreamed I was flying. And high up above, my eyes could clearly see the Statue of Liberty sailing away to sea. We come on the ship they call the Mayflower. We come on the ship that sailed to the moon. We come in the age's most uncertain hour and sing an American tune. But it's all right. It's all right. You can't be forever blessed. But tomorrow's another working day, and I've got to get some rest.
Many's the time I've been mistaken, and many times confused. Yes, and I've often felt forsaken, and certainly misused. Ah, but I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm just weary to my bones. So you don't expect to be bright and bon, so far away from home, so far away from home.
I don't know a soul who's not been battered. I don't have a friend who feels at ease. I don't know a dream that's not been shattered or driven to its knees. But it's all right. It's all right, for we live so well, so long. Still, when I think of the road we're traveling on, I wonder what's gone wrong.
Yes, and I wonder what's gone wrong. And I dreamed I was dying. I dreamed that my soul rose unexpectedly, and looking back down at me, smiled reassuringly. And I dreamed I was flying, and high up above, my eyes could clearly see the Statue of Liberty sailing away to sea. And I dreamed I was flying.
And I dreamed I was flying, and I dreamed I was flying. We come on the ship they call the Mayflower. We come on the ship that sailed the moon. We come in the age's most uncertain hours and sing an American tune. But it's all right.
It's all right, it's all right. We can't be forever blessed. Still, tomorrow's gonna be another working day, and I'm trying to get some rest. That's all I'm trying, to get some rest.